Hello students, myself Monojoy Dey, your English helper on the go. Today I shall discuss a lesson from Snapshot which is taught in CBSE curriculum of Standard 11. The lesson under discussion today is the
The
Summer of
Address
White
by
Beautiful
Marga Minko.
Thoughts. Dear students, kindly visit my website after signing up with your mail ID and access the detailed contents of all the lessons of your syllabus, including reading, writing and grammar, spoken English, English for competitive exams, and podcasts on a host of topics that really matter to us all. In this lesson, I shall focus very briefly about what the story is all about and story sequence. So, dear students, let's begin. Well, this is a heart-touching story by a young girl who was the lone survivor in the family after the Holocaust of World War II. A young Jewish girl comes back to Holland in search of her mother's belongings, only to realize that her search does not hold any meaning or relevance anymore. The narrator, a young girl, knocked on the door of a house and introduced herself to the woman who opened it. The woman did not show any sign of recognition but stared at her in silence. The narrator felt she had rung the wrong bell but recalled having seen this woman briefly long back. Her doubt was put to rest by the green knitted cardigan that the woman was wearing actually belonged to her mother. When the young girl asked the lady about her mother, she said that she had thought none of the people who had left had come back. The girl replied that she was the only one. The woman expressed her inability to help her out, although the girl insisted that she had come by train only to talk to her. On her way back to the station, she looked at the address again, which her mother had once informed her about. It was the girl's mother who informed her about Mrs. Darling, who used to visit their place regularly and had taken something with her on every visit, with the assurance that she would save all the nice things in case they had to leave. She walked back to the station through familiar streets and places that she had seen for the first time after the war. The streets and houses brought back precious memories of a bygone time which she wished to forget. She remembered meeting Mrs. Darling for the first time. She was walking out of their door carrying a heavy case. It was at the moment when her mother had briefly introduced them both and asked her to remember the address. The narrator was scared of coming face to face with a painful past that reminded of times which no longer existed and of people long gone by. She wanted to see her mother's belongings, touch them and recollect the memories and attest to them. So she paid a second visit to Mrs. Darling. Mrs. Darling was not home and her 15-year-old daughter opened the door. The narrator found herself in the midst of things that once belonged to her mother. She was distressed and aggrieved at the coarse and disorderly manner in which they were all arranged. The girl brought tea and took out spoons from a box. The narrator knew they were all silverware her mother had told her once. She rubbed her fingers over the woolen tablecloth and remembered the burn mark on it. Memories came flooding back to the lone survivor of a Jewish family. It was time for her to leave as she had a train to catch. She did not wish to wait for Mrs. Darling. At the corner of the road, she read the name plate Marconi Road. She had been to number 46. The material possessions seemed valueless when severed from their familiar surroundings and true owner. She realized she did not need them anymore. She decided to leave the past behind and forget the address. So, dear students, that's all about the story at a glance. Hope you have understood the narration. Before I wind up, let me do a post-reading analysis of the story very briefly. This story is divided into two parts. The pre-war details are informed to us through the narrative of the victim girl. During the pre-war period, Mrs. Darling came to the narrator's house and took away their nice things. During those days, the narrator and her family were always in the grip of constant fear to flee or encounter arrest by the Nazis. We get the glimpse of her pre-war times through her memory. The post-war period is awful and pathetic as the narrator was the lone survivor of the war. She was a young Jewish girl in Holland who became victim of Second World War. In order to get some comfort from seeing her mother's belongings, which were under the custody of Mrs. Darling, she decided to pay a visit to Mrs. Darling's house. In the midst of these material objects, she understood how insignificant things become when severed or taken away from the people they are associated with. Therefore, she decided to leave the house of Mrs. Darling and forget the address altogether. Thus, the story very poignantly describes a trail of suffering, pain, and agony that war leaves behind. The narrator in this story has to live with the trauma of losing her parents for the rest of her life. Thus, the war leaves behind only regret, repentance, and nostalgic moments. Dear students, that's all about the story. Till I come back with another video, keep watching my channel, and for NCERT solution, kindly visit my website, the link of which is given in the description. Thanks for watching.